One of my favorite tropes in games is when they'll throw a late game level threat at the player well before they expect you to actually be able to handle it. It's a great way to showcase how much the player will grow in their journey and makes the eventual defeat of said threat something that's incredibly satisfying. JRPGs have been doing this since Dragon Quest, with the titular dragon being something the player can actually go chase down level 1, if they enjoy dying, and Fire Emblem has also been doing this idea from the very start, showcasing a late game threat on a map well before the player actually has a unit that can defeat them. Because Fire Emblem has been doing this since the very start, this video's not going to go over every individual case of this happening, just some of the ones that I think are the absolute coolest and most worth talking about.
There is no meme. This is just a threat.
Y'all remember when this guy was a meme? Just this villager with this face. I remember seeing him posted around a lot in some Fire Emblem circles a few years ago. And to his credit, he is completely correct. You cannot defeat Garneth. Garneth appears in the first game of the series on the bottom right corner of the desert map. He is completely invincible, because the only thing that can kill him is the tome Starlight, and you don't have that yet. It'd be one thing for the game just to say you can't beat him without Starlight. They do that with Medeus and the Falchion, but with Garneth, he's there for you to attack just to see how helpless you are. Granted, he isn't actually a threat because he doesn't move. He just kinda guards those two chests until he eventually gets bored and wanders off. So he's not really much of a interaction on the map. Shadow Dragon fixes this by having him charge at you, but due to the layout of the map, all you need to do is put a healer in his way, and they usually have enough resistance to stop him. So, not exactly the most interesting example off the bat, but this was an NES game 30 years ago. Fire Emblem has had a lot of time to refine this trope, and it does a lot of cool things with it later. I just thought it was worth mentioning the first time that it happens. Moving on to a more modern title, the Death Knight has one of my favorite ways to do this. A lot of JRPGs will do this trope and have it be a forced loss battle, which I think works well and good, but the Death Knight does it in a way that you never actually have to fight him, but if you can beat him, you get some goodies as a reward. It lets you look at him and see, oh god, that guy's gonna be a monster for me to deal with eventually. But you can just walk around him, or if you're a greedy son of a bitch, you can put all your effort into killing him, and that is incredibly difficult to do. Unless you have Lysithea, but this ain't about her. Watching the Death Knight become this sort of raid boss where everyone in your army is pitching in the 1 or 2 damage they're actually able to do to him really sells how much of a threat he is, and it makes the maps where he eventually will just charge at you and be a threat much more intense because you've had to deal with him for so many chapters prior. The concept of locking an entire class's promotion item to the Death Knight is a really cool idea, even if, in practice, it's just good on Hubert and really not anyone else. It would be great on Lysithea, if women could be dark mages. Fire Emblem Three Houses gender locking strikes again. Fire Emblem 4 absolutely loves this trope. It does it like 3 times, and every time it's great. First of all, it does it in the prologue with Arvis, one of the game's main antagonists, who isn't fought until the semi-final chapter of the game. But here he is in the prologue, capable of wiping out an entire enemy unit by himself, and even giving Sigurd one of his most powerful weapons. This is to trick the player, because the idea of a powerful sage who comes to join you at the end of the game is something Fire Emblem's done before with Gateau, and it looks like Arvis is gonna follow the same suit, only for him to betray you at the end of Sigurd's tale rather than help you. And, as a little bonus Easter egg, if you look at his stats screen, you see a tiny glimmer of holy blood down there that he shouldn't have. And that is something that a new player will not understand in the slightest, but someone who's beaten the game will really fear. Then it does it again with Eldigan, doing essentially the same thing as Arvis, coming in, helping you when you need him, only for him to eventually be a threat. It's the exact same idea, but it's done well there too. And lastly, it does it with the final boss, Julius. Julius appears on the semi-final map of the game, pretty late into it, and he is virtually unstoppable. All of your damage gets reduced, he can one-shot virtually all of your units. He is horrifying. But the game is really clever in how they let you handle him, because you don't have to handle him. Julius has 4 conditions that will make him fuck off. Killing him, which is pretty much impossible, going around him and seizing the castle that he's guarding, which is very doable with Seliph and a Dancer, killing Ishtar, his girlfriend, who, while she's powerful, she is incredibly vulnerable to the Shannon button, so just put him there and deal with it. Or, if he or Ishtar kill one of your units, which sounds irreversible, but this is FE4. You can revive them with the Valkyrie staff, so it's actually not impossible to just offer Hannibal's life to them in exchange for them to leave you alone. It's a really clever way to put an insurmountable threat to the player, and it also makes you realize you really need Julia's help next map. But okay, these examples are all well and good, but there is one example that is more famous than any other. The Black Knight coming out of that goddamn house is one of the most famous villain entrances, if not the most, in the series, getting its own cipher card, and generally causing every player who's played FE9 to shit their pants. Now, the Black Knight has been foreshadowed wonderfully. He shows up out of nowhere several chapters before this, kills your dad, and is just an incredibly imposing design and character. He's had a few scenes since where he's been talking to the big villains, and now he's finally on the map. And his stats are insurmountable. To survive a round of combat with this guy, you need 24 speed to not get doubled, and you're gonna need a defense and health combination of around 48 for him to not kill you in a single hit. That is impossible for any of your units to have at this point in the game, unless you are playing, maybe, the American-only easy mode. You've invested every single stat booster and bonus experience point into Boyd stocks, and you throw a virgin sacrifice into the volcano, you might be able to survive a round of combat. But it's very clear, this guy is hopelessly out of your league. Then, he disappears. He does not appear again for 13 chapters, and when he does, your units are actually closer to that threshold. There's a good chance you have one, if not multiple units that can survive a round of combat with the Black Knight. They definitely can't kill him, because he has magical plot armor, but they can survive. It makes the point very clear. The gap is closing. And then it makes the showdown with the Black Knight a few chapters after this really feel like you've overcome the gap between you. It's a hard fight. The Black Knight is an incredibly difficult battle, but compared to Chapter 11 and Chapter 24, you feel like you can overcome him, which is something that was not possible before. It's a feeling that really only a video game can do. For all the talk about video games as an art form, and they'll usually show a story-based game like Last of Us or something, not to diminish what those games do, but when I think of video games as an art form, I think of stuff like this. The ability to convey an emotion of overcoming a gap in talent is not possible by watching a movie or reading a book. This dumb bullshit is only possible in video games, which I think is why I like the trope so much, and I love that Fire Emblem continuously does it. There are many that I didn't mention, like Zelgius and Hardin, and if you have a favorite one, please let me know in the comments below, because I really like hearing people's thoughts, And I also like getting comments to drive up engagement, because I'm just a greedy slut. Before this video ends, I would like to ask if you enjoy having kneecaps. Yes? Well, in order for it to stay that way, I'm going to demand that you follow me on Twitter and consider joining my Discord server. Both links are in the description, and consider becoming a patron to help support the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. My patrons include the likes of Adebayo Thompson, Andrew Crockett, Bean Juice, Benz Again, Dr. McBackstab, Great Riek, Hell on Heelys, Ichigo D, Camus, Jaeger, Guts, Kenpachi, Shiro, Uzumaki, Kiria, Mato, Kratos, Char Ansible, Frederick, Sirius, Basara, Hakumen, The White Void, Despacito 2, Lysevening Bolt, Marth the Valiant War Criminal, Morga Lorgan, Played Arrow, Shenlu, The Fool, the world's most unironic 8.5 tail stand, Walmart Greeter, Ya Girl Olwen, Brentendo 11, Drew Hack, Fire Emblem Lord, Ginger, Goo Goo Gaga, Cornelia Milkers 92, Maple Knight, and Upscale Furry Trash. Thank you all for your continued support, and I'll see you in the next one.